You're watching a video from TheAlley Church, located in Cottage Grove, Minnesota.
So this morning, as we conclude the Ephesians series, I thought it would be good for us as we read through Ephesians chapter 6 to see how those words intersect into the lives of people. And a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking with a couple here from the church, and they had come to me and said, one of the weeks that you were preaching, you said a phrase that really, the Spirit grabbed a hold of us. And the phrase was that God doesn't waste what we've been through. And so they said, you know what, we would really like to share with you, Pastor Ben, and then whoever else God may be leading us to share with, how that truth is a reality in our lives. And so it's my honor and it's my joy to invite this couple up here today. And I want to ask you to please encourage them as they're coming up, because it takes a lot of courage to come up in front of people. And so if you would, Seth and Gail Williams, will you guys come forward? Grab that seat and so you can come. Come on. Yeah, come on. You go right here in the middle. Yeah, come on. It's all right. Yes, it is. That's why I'm always sweating. Yeah. So, again, thank you guys for just hearing from the Lord, hearing from the Spirit of God, and being willing to come and share where you've seen God at work. One of the phrases that you guys used with me is you felt like there was a time where the rug was pulled out from under you. And so you guys recognize that term, when the rug gets pulled out from under you. And so I'm so thankful that the Spirit of God has given you the courage to come and share that. I know some of that's hard, but I stand on the Word of God that God will not waste what's happened. Okay. And so I would just like for you, first of all, just to, again, introduce yourself, say how long you've been married and how long you guys have been at TheAlley. So we'll let Seth do that. So
I'm going.
It's on.
Okay.
You got to get on it.
My wife and I are going to be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary next month.
All right, yeah.
She's put up with a great deal over 40. We've actually been together 42 years, so she's done really well.
And how long have you guys been at TheAlley?
How long have we been at TheAlley? Not long enough. 2 years? Yeah, a little over 2 years.
Okay. I know they've been here long enough because Seth has his seat. Okay.
But wait a minute, we sat up here and we
Yes.
kind of like it up here now.
Yeah, so like I think it's about halfway back on the left-hand side. There might be a name on the back of the chair that says Seth. But I challenged him. I said, hey, come and sit up front with us because we want to pray with you and worship with you. And so, again, I'm so honored that you would come this morning. And really just kind of to get us started, I'd love for you just to kind of share kind of where you guys were at before the rug got pulled out, and just share some of that with the family here today.
Yeah, some folks have asked us if we were nervous about doing this, and I think initially the response to that was, yeah, a little. But nervous is waiting for that medical report from the doctor as to whether or not you have cancer. Nervous is waiting to find out if you're going to prison or not. Those are things that create nervous. What we're doing here today, hopefully, is that we're with our family.
Yeah.
We're talking about our Father. And we want to praise him because he has done some amazing things in our lives. All we're doing is telling a story, but more so it's not our story, it's God's story about what he's done. So up until 2009, we had our life all planned out. We knew what we were going to do. We knew where we were going. And I was trained and experienced in being in control. I'm a retired police officer, and so I had experience in being in control. And I was going to go my way. And looking back on it now, God had made some efforts to let me know that it really wasn't my plan that mattered quite so much, but I was not receptive to that at all. And God just was not part of my life up until that point in time. And in 2009, the phone rang when I was home. I was retired at that time, and it was my wife. And our world changed instantly.
I'll try and do this without crying.
We're with you, girl. We're with you.
I lost my job, and driving home, I needed to tell my ex-policeman husband that I was probably going to prison. And it wasn't an easy thing to say. I don't like confrontation very well, so to have to say anything that was going to cause an argument was hard, let alone tell him that our whole life was about to change. And as I was driving home, I felt such shame. I was a person who always did everything right. My father used to say I was born 40 because I never was this irresponsible person. I always did the right thing. Very active in church and Bible study and all that kind of stuff. And here I am. I made decisions over and over and over that totally changed our life. But at the same time, even though I felt all that shame, that I had to tell all these people that had this one vision of me, this expectation of me, and I had to tell them that I wasn't that person.
Oh, man.
But at the same time, I felt relieved, because you can't finish something until you start it. And it was a nice feeling to know that, okay, because I'd been living with this for a long time. For 5 or 6 years, I'd been doing what I was doing, and so it was really nice to know that it's over. I mean, it's starting, and it's going to be horrible, but it's over.
And
So-
let me just say this, that is not, you're not the only one. I mean, I think sometimes in church and in our culture, there's this idea that there's only a couple of people that are going through stuff. And so I think I'm glad you're able to say that, because the truth is everybody has something going on, and everybody has something that has happened or is happening. We just do really good at covering it up. And God's really trying to free us from that, and he's trying to show us a different way. And sometimes the way he shows that is to pull the rug out. And it's not fun and it doesn't feel good, but there is something that God does in that. And so, you had mentioned that as this was happening, what was the outcome? So she said, hey, I got fired from my job. What kind of happened? What ball rolled after that?
Well, first the angry one. I actually packed the car, was going to leave, and had it.
Wow.
The feeling of betrayal, and never thinking to look inside my own family for the type of behavior that I had investigated many times over the years. And so it was mostly anger and distrust. I was angry at God for letting this happen, and it was just kind of at that point.
Yeah. So it wasn't just that you lost your job, right? There were other things that came along with that as well.
Well, and I when I lost my job, and then I had to, our whole lifestyle changed because Seth was retired. I carried our health insurance. I was the major breadwinner. We had a lot of stuff. We kind of taught our kids that stuff is really important, and kind of all of that. And so, and not only that, we had a lot of people in our lives. But because of my prison experience and his living through it, we lost a lot of people that we thought cared about us.
Wow.
And that was really hard. Family, I have a brother that doesn't speak to me because of this. So that kind of part was really hard. And I think it was hard for Seth because he's a policeman. All those people in town, all those police, was a policeman in the town we live in. So he thinks that all those people think he did what I did, but I did it. You can't stand up and say, no, he didn't have anything to do with it. I really screwed this up.
But word got out.
But so
It was on the news.
it was on.
Yeah, it was on the news. Okay.
And one of the things that we've learned through this process, though, is that we can't control how other people respond and deal with their own issues of anger or grief or whatever. That's entirely up to them, and it's not right or wrong. It just is what it is, and we accepted that. It was hard. Colleagues that I had worked with, both at the county employment and the city employment that I had, drifted away. And I don't blame them. I get it. I understand that. But the other side of the coin is, and some of Gail's friends and my friends that drifted away and family, the other side of that coin is God brought some people into our lives
yeah.
in amazing ways. The right people, the right time, the right way, for the right reason.
Yeah, the Bible calls that pruning. It just doesn't feel good, right? So there's people that get pruned from our lives, and then people that God brings to replace that. And so before we get to because I want you to share a little bit, I don't know if most people have been to prison here, okay? So there's got to be an experience. There's got to be something that happens there in that moment that changes us, that can change us. And so I'd like for you to share a little bit about that experience. But before you do that, you had spoken about God did bring people into your life as well. People were removed, right? People walked away. But there's also some people. And can you share the experience of the day that you were actually leaving to go to prison and what happened there?
Oh, okay. Well, and we just, it's really important for us to let you know that Dave and Candy Westland have walked alongside us for a long time. I've known them from our other church, and we were kind of acquaintances. But when you look back, you see how God brought them and was using them and getting it ready so when we needed them. You know, 1 o'clock in the morning the night I told Seth, I called Candy, and she came. She came to our house in the middle of the night.
Thank you, Candy.
So we had so many people that stepped up and were just really supportive. So the day before I went to prison, we had a party. It was July, and we had this huge party. And we had a lot of people that came too.
So a prison party.
A prison party. Yep,
right.
we had a prison party because I was going away, and we were thanking these folks. And so again, our friends brought this cake, and the cake had a ball and chain on it. And even better than that, had a knife inside the cake. So God brings humor in the midst of our craziness. But that was one heck of a party.
Wow, I bet. Well, before you hand it over, would you share just a little bit about your experience there and kind of was God in that?
I think at the time I didn't think God was very in it because it was all about me.
Wow.
You have to look outside yourself to see God. It's not obvious sometimes, and he says he's there, but we also have to look.
Yeah.
We have to ask. Yeah. We have to knock. We have to seek.
Draw near to me, and I'll draw near to you.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's crazy to say, but prison was not a horrible experience for me. I was there I got the remote. I had a TV, and I had my own remote. So that kind of is how prison was for me. No, it was really good. I was involved with a lot of amazing things. I was a math tutor, so I got to tutor women that had a lot of brain injuries from drug and alcohol issues.
Wow.
We'd learn long division on Friday, and on Monday we started over.
Golly.
I took college courses. I was in a therapy dog training program. Got to go to church twice a week. The other thing that was amazing is in prison, you get a certain amount of visiting hours a month. Seth was the visiting scheduler because people had to check with him because I only had so many hours and so many people wanted to come see me that I would run out if he wasn't in charge. Yeah. So it was scary. I mean, there was this woman in my class. She was about 6 feet tall, and she had no teeth, and truly she had killed someone. And that's why she was there. Wow. But because I was a math tutor, God brought me to a place I felt safe. These women respected me. Wow. They took care of me. They ate with me. They sat with me in the common area and stuff.
So nobody was going to mess with you?
Nobody was going to mess with me because I had her. And God, and for me, I'm telling you, a suburban white girl from Cottage Grove, to be in prison, it was an experience.
Wow.
But Candyman took care of me. And it was...
That was her name?
Candyman.
Candyman, okay.
Candyman was her name. But it was scary. I mean, the first day I was there, of course it was scary. And it's hard to live by all those rules, to have to sign in and sign out. You can't go here, and you can't talk to people the way that you talk to them here. The guards are different. And so it was a real learning experience. But looking back, it was a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So, Seth, she left, went to prison, and you were by yourself. And so, what did you see God in that, or just what kind of things did you experience as your wife went to prison?
I think what kind of kicked the ball rolling for me was that when Gail, I would talk to her on the phone, and she would share some of her experiences, some of the stories about what had been going on from the time that she left the Hennepin County Jail and went down to Shakopee Women's Prison. And she started sharing some stories of things that she was experiencing interacting with other prisoners. And can I share the one about Choose Joy? Things like, I think it was it Candyman? Mm-hmm. Okay. This big woman who asked Gail at one point in time why she was always joyful. And Gail told her that it was a choice that she'd make each day to choose joy. And that went on for a while, and then one day this woman came walking into the math class, threw her arms up in the air, and said, "Today I choose joy."
Wow.
And so things like that, and there were several other stories of the impact she was having with people there that started me thinking that God's using her in a place
Wow.
that she never would have gone to. And so that 2,000-pound elephant of the crime and punishment started to diminish a little bit as the impact of all of that started to kind of blossom.
Yeah.
And we saw some of these things developing. And so that was,
Yeah.
that's what got me clicking initially.
Yeah. So as you were back at home, how long was that? How long were you away?
Too long.
I was in Shakopee for 12 months and then in the halfway house for 8. So I was away from home 20 months.
Okay. And so kind of what is, as you were there at home alone and stuff like that, trying to process all that, was there anything that helped as you were doing that? Was there anything that was changing about you as that was happening, as your wife was away?
I think the biggest thing was the people that God was putting on my path at that point in time. Like Gail said, she carried our health insurance and stuff, so I needed to go get a job that had health insurance involved. And I ended up going to District 833 Transportation, hired on, and became a driver trainer for school bus drivers over there. And over the course of my employment there, I ran into Mark Anderson, Dan Miller, Mark's up at the Remedy now, but Dan Miller, ran into him. And again, these people that God puts in our path, and I happened to share an afternoon school with Dan, and I'd go over and sit in his bus, and we'd talk. And he started sharing some things about TheAlley, and we started talking a little bit about how God was working. Because I was new at this. This was not something I had a lot of experience with, and that I had a lot of skepticism to overcome. And Dan started sharing some of the things for me to look at and pay attention to. And the glory of God and how God works. And I reflected back on a statement that a pastor at another church made one time, that God does his best work in the poo. And I thought, okay, this is the poo. So we'll see what he does here.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously when something happens, one of the ways that the enemy does his best work isn't necessarily stuff that gets taken away, but it's how we view ourselves because of things that have happened. And so some of the greatest fiery darts of the enemy are fear, shame, guilt, and so, yeah. So what are some of those things that you felt as you got the word about that? Now you're in prison. Were there moments where the enemy was trying to take those things and instead of God using them for good, the enemy was trying to use them to destroy you?
Absolutely. It's a target-rich environment.
Yeah.
I mean, look what I did. There was all of those things, shame and fear and guilt. And there were moments when I thought, I couldn't even believe I did what I did. And when you lose yourself, because I had always professed that I was a child of God, but didn't really feel like I was. Because if I was, why would I do that? I know better than that. And it wasn't like, I know a sin is a sin, but this wasn't like it was a little sin.
Yeah.
This was a big sin. It was huge. And it's really hard. But again, in those darkest moments, that's when God comes. And if there's one tiny little trickle, he uses it. I know that the enemy does too, but God's stronger. And
Amen.
and you have a lot of time to reflect when you're sitting in a room with 3 other people you don't know, and you shouldn't know, and you shouldn't talk to, because who knows what's going to happen. So there's a lot of time to reflect. But again, because I was there and went through all that, again, he used that, and he used that woman he put in my life who walked alongside me and who didn't judge me, and who helped my faith, who really, when God gives you those people and you're feeling down on yourself and they say, God loves you, that's all you need to hear.
Yeah.
That's all you need to hear.
Wow. So well, I don't know. Did you want to share? I mean, did you feel like some of that what you were feeling too as she was away? Do you feel like some of that was also true of you?
Certainly. I hired a lawyer too to protect my issues or things with this, and I was advised by my attorney to divorce my wife because it would make good business sense.
Wow.
And I looked at him and I said, I don't have a business relationship with my wife. We, those oaths that we took, so many years ago, for better or for worse, well, this was the worst part. And the decision to stay there, but those types of pressures, and even comments from friends and that, I felt pressure to defend myself. It was embarrassing. It was on the news, and of course people were looking at me like, well, you were doing the same thing, and what do you do? But the pressure was there. Yeah. The desire was going away, though, because I thought, God really is doing some cool stuff here. Yeah. And I think I'm going to be okay. And it helped me give up that control. Yeah. And to start to trust. And there's been fair warning. He's going to have to facilitate this for time management, because once we get going on this, God is doing so many amazing things in our life that we tend not to want to shut up about it. So.
Yeah. So it's okay. We got plenty of time. So the as I think about the promise of Scripture that God will take what was intended for evil and use it for good, I certainly want you guys to speak on. We're talking about this victory that comes in Jesus, the armor of God and the shield of faith and all the things that God bestows on us and invites us to use in order to fight the battle. And I know that maybe you're here this morning and maybe you might be in the battle, you might be coming out of the battle, or you might be going into the battle. So there's always a battle, though. And so wherever you're at this morning, I want you to share and let them speak into that as the Spirit speaks through them on what would you consider the victory to be. So the rug gets pulled out. You spend over a year in prison and some more time in a halfway house. You're by yourself. There's obviously some things that the enemy with his strategy can pull and lure you away. But God does something miraculous in the midst of the poop, right? And so, but what is it that changed about you? What is it that God changed about you that wouldn't have changed if the rug didn't get pulled out?
To say that I was a black and white person, is either right or wrong. My perspective on life, my judgment of people just by what they looked like, and I got an opinion about you now. I don't even know you, but I got an opinion about you. Wow. I don't do that anymore. There are good people in prison. I learned that. Wow. As a police officer, and especially when I was working narcotics, put a lot of people in prison on felony charges. I never once considered that ripple effect of their actions, how that was going to impact their family and their friends. Wow. Now I understand. Yeah. The acceptance of the human condition, I think, is probably one of God's greatest gift to me. Wow. That take people, and that's one of the things that when we first came here to the Alley that really resonated with me was that people were just so willing to say, I'm broken, and it's okay.
Yeah.
God's got this.
Yeah.
And so I think at the end of the day, those are the gifts that just a few of the gifts that God's given to me, and changed my heart in a great many ways.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember coming here, and I don't know if it was the right thing to do, but it's how the Lord told me to start, but to really speak about brokenness. And one of the things that the Lord has constantly asked me to share with people is not to skip brokenness. Don't skip it, because it's how it's how God was glorified through Jesus. And so we can't skip those processes where we're getting pruned or things are coming at us that we don't understand. Before worship this morning, we have pre-worship, and we were talking about Job and how his response to what was going on, even though he didn't understand it, was worship. That was his response, And so, so why don't you share a little bit this morning about, again, what is it through all of that you feel this is the nugget that God wanted you to have?
I think there's probably two of them. The first one is that I still am who he says I am. And this is a weird story about that, but you lose your identity when you're in prison. You don't have an identity. You can't be you.
Wow.
You have to be on all the time to be safe, to get through it. So you don't have an identity. And I know this is really silly, but I was away for a whole year. We have a dog at home, and his name is Hooli, and he's a little black lab, and he's my baby. And after I got to the halfway house, Seth came to see me, and he had Hooli in the car with him, and Hooli remembered me. He saw me, and he went crazy in the backseat of the car, and in that moment reminded me that I was still, he remembered me. He knows who I am, and he loves me, and he didn't forget me. And at the same time, that made me realize God does the same thing. He knows who I am. He is there. I can be away as long as I am away. But when I come back, he remembered me, and I am still who he says I am. And I think the other thing that was a big lesson was that we don't have to go through our brokenness alone. I think we tend to try and be tough. We don't want people to know. And I think the biggest thing that I learned, because we were blessed with people who walked alongside us, but we have to let those people walk alongside us. People don't know if we don't tell them. And when you speak your shame, it goes away. If you don't speak your shame, it never goes away. But when you speak it and you allow people to walk alongside you, it's gone. It's absolutely gone. And we just need to do that more. I think we need to get outside ourselves and not worry about what we did, but remember whose we are, and that there are people that want to walk alongside us.
Gail is preaching next week. One of the things that fascinated me when we were meeting together before this was your perspective before the rug got pulled out. That Seth had spoken about. There was just this perspective that you had about life and perspective about stuff and what was important and what wasn't important, and there was just this perspective. And then the rug gets pulled out, and then on the back end of that, something shifted, and God did something and shifted something in you. Could you speak a little bit about that? I think it'd be good for the house to hear that.
I think financially we were very well off beforehand, and with that came materialistic attitudes. What we had, where we were going, what we were doing was very important, and the values were just messed up more than anything. And I still struggle with this one. I worry about finances a little bit, but
I don't think you're alone.
Yeah, right. The thing was that financially we were pretty devastated. It wrecked a lot of our financial security. It was gone, and so we had to rebuild that. And I thought, boy, at this stage of life, this is so wrong on so many levels to have to be reinventing the wheel at our age. But amazingly, it's working out just fine.
Yeah.
It's just fine.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything on that?
Well, and I think that we learn to trust. I don't worry about it, because when, again, we could talk for 3 days about all the things God has done, but there's just time after time after time that when you see, when we worried, and I never thought my crime was a money crime. I can't even work at McDonald's. I can't, but a God-filled man who owned a clinic hired me.
Wow.
And said, we're not going to talk about this anymore. God's got this, and and now our clinic got bought out by a big clinic, and I have a job that I love, and I get to be with people, and I make a nice salary. We have health insurance, and we didn't lose our house, and we still go out to eat once in a while. And so it really has proven to us that, yeah, we worry, because that's what the enemy does. He pushes that worry in. But at the end of the day, God's got it.
Yeah.
God's got it.
It's the seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added unto you. Right? So it's that. And so to me, as I heard your story, and as we sat together and had breakfast together and stuff, I kept thinking about what's the victory, And so there's many things that God has done. But I think that ultimately, on the back end, it's a change of perspective. It's on the back end, it's a trust that maybe had to grow a little bit. And so a lot. And so I think, ultimately, and again, if you're here in the house and you're going in, you're in it or you're coming out, I want you to think about what is really God wanting to do. What is really the victory? And I think the victory is Him. And our perspective on Him, when we get pulled, the rug gets pulled out, we come on the other side and we see how God still sees us, right? And He's never left us or forsaked us. And so He is the reward. And when He's the reward, all of our perspective changes. And now we have an eternal perspective, and our whole life changes because of that. And I think that's the victory that comes through Jesus.
And I don't know if you guys know that Chris Tomlin song, that verse of Amazing Grace. The Sunday after I lost my job, our choir sang that song. And the chorus goes, my chains are gone, I've been set free, my God, my Savior, ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace.
Amen.
That is my victory, that's our victory, that's our family's victory, and that's your victory.
Amen. Awesome. Let's thank these guys this morning.
Thank you for listening to this podcast from TheAlley Church. More can be found at thealley.org. Follow Jesus, live love.